Born to Annoy, A Dawning of Awareness. Chapter 8. Old Drive and Another Birthday. My memories of my junior school days are lamentably poor, but I know I must have enjoyed attending Old Drive, because I never had any desire to truant. Not only that, but I quickly progressed with my reading skills, with the ongoing encouragement of Auntie Dolly and my teacher's expertise. In fact, by the age of 9 or 10, I was an avid reader, and if the weather wasn't suitable for playing out, I'd have my head in some adventure story or other. Treasure Island, Robinson Crusoe, Black Bess, and Kidnapped all spring readily to mind. One Sunday morning I was spread out on the living room carpet, engrossed in reading the latter book, when a sharp shout of "shift" and a gentle kick on my bum brought me back from the deck of a storm-tossed brig to the reality of domestic life. "Come on, Malc. I've been shouting at you for 5 minutes. I can't sweep the carpet with you lying about, making the place look untidy." I simply hadn't heard Dolly's shouts, and I probably wouldn't have heard the last if it hadn't been accompanied by the kick. When I picked up a book, my mind disappeared into its pages, and I became part of the adventure I was reading about. At first my daily routine was pretty much as my aunts had planned. I travelled into Gorton with Beatty, disembarking from the bus at the stop opposite the Plough. A downhill walk between the usual small terraced houses of English Street, and then alongside Sunnybrow Park, through which Gore Brook flowed, to the dog-leg crossroad at the bottom. Far Lane went off to the left, Brookhurst Road to the right, and Old Drive climbed upwards straight ahead. The school stood at the top of the drive to the left, with wrought iron fenced playing fields opposite, shared with Riderbrow Secondary School, which was behind the junior school and separated from its yard by a high brick wall. Immediately before these playing fields was a sweet shop owned by the Chadwicks, whose daughter, Edna, was a close friend of Auntie Dolly, and occasionally visited our house at Denton. She was tall and slim-waisted, dark auburn-haired, and always fashionably dressed, with charm bracelets tinkling on her wrists. By the time I was 13, she was an object of my lust, not least because of her magnificent cleavage. However, enough of that. It is not a subject suitable for discussion by a boy of 9 or 10, although we may well return to it. The school didn't have space for providing dinners. We were therefore marched down Old Drive and then left down Brookhurst Road to St. Philip's Church Hall, a kind of Nissen hut next to the church. A lot of the kids tended to complain about the school meals, but I wasn't one of them. I always had an appetite, and if there were any seconds going, I'd take advantage. Semolina, rice, and sago puddings were clear favourites. After school, I'd wander back to Cross Street and Beatty's shop, although on my 10th birthday this routine changed. By then Beatty and Dolly had determined I was sensible enough to travel home alone, but I needed some training in domestic science first. They were never home before 6:30, with the exception of Wednesdays in Beatty's case. They didn't want me to go hungry, so they taught me how to boil an egg, make toast, and open a can of soup, and heat it up. "Make sure it doesn't boil, Malc. Keep stirring." I've always been good at stirring. However, before I relate life in 1954, I must first return to 1953. For in that year, on the 2nd of June, a minor event in world history took place, which was seen as a major event in Britain. Elizabeth II of England and Wales, and the first of Scotland, was crowned in Westminster Abbey. This in turn promoted a major change in Britain's entertainment culture, the beginning of the mass television age, and the consequent slow decline of cinema. Street parties were held throughout the country, not least in working-class areas. Any excuse for a party, especially for children, was seized upon with alacrity by the working classes as a means of brightening up their normal, dismal lives, even those with Republican sympathies, of which my Auntie Dolly was one. Whilst the children were being entertained that Tuesday, many adults crowded around the television sets of their few neighbours who owned such luxuries, viewing the pomp and pageantry on tiny 9-inch screens in black and white pictures. As a consequence, the toiling masses were introduced to the new medium, and the manufacturers and retailers, and not least the rental companies, prepared to ride the booming wave in sales. For me, the highlight came in the last week of the school term, when the whole school was marched down Old Hall Drive and up Hengist Street to cross Hyde Road in a great long crocodile, and so into Wellington Street and the Cosmos Cinema. Here we watched a short film of the Coronation in full colour. This was followed by the main event, a film named The Conquest of Everest, featuring the intrepid mountaineers Sherpa Tenzing of Nepal and Edmund Hillary of New Zealand, the representatives of the glorious British Empire, and therefore honorary Englishmen. Not quite in Tenzing's case. He wasn't white. Hillary was knighted. Tenzing wasn't. Guess who was my favourite? You're right, Tenzing, the professional mountaineer and the official representative of the skilled labourers who built the ladder and made the climb possible in the first place. So fast forward once more to 1954, and particularly July the 2nd of that year, my 10th birthday. Or, at least, the Saturday immediately following, for the 2nd of July was a Friday. Dolly announced that morning she was going shopping, and asked me if I would like to accompany her. Naturally, being a helpful young lad and always willing to escort a lady, I agreed. We left Beatty feeling sorry for herself. She had a streaming cold, and Dolly had persuaded her to take the day off. The nearest shops, apart from a small sweet shop, cum newsagent, were in the Crown Point area of Denton, some 3/4 of a mile distant. We commenced our purchases at the baker's, followed by the butcher's, but much to my surprise, because I'd had my birthday tea the night before, Dolly then took me to the local sports shop, which stocked rally bikes. I was asked what I would like as a present. A bright red bike, a Rally Trent Tourist, caught my eye, but I thought I'd be pushing my luck. The price was about £17, which I knew was a small fortune. It would have taken my dad over 3 weeks' hard labour, 48 hours a week, to earn that. Instead I chose a bow and arrows. These were not the common or garden variety, as exchanged by the Rose and Rag and Bone man. The longbow was made of best quality varnished ash, and the arrows, all 3 of them, had brass tips and real multicoloured feathered flights. The genuine articles as used by Robin Hood and the Welsh heroes of Agincourt. Dolly added a large round straw-stuffed target with red, white and blue rings and a black bullseye. I struggled home with it awkwardly clasped in my hands, the bow slung around my shoulders, the arrows sticking out of Dolly's shopping bag. "Come on, Malc. Beatty'll be wondering where we are. I don't know what she'll say when she spots you coming home, armed to the teeth. We thought you'd choose a bike." Eventually we reached Romford Avenue. Walking past one of the houses across the road, a man stood up and stretched his back. He'd been tending his roses. He greeted us, a broad smile on his friendly face. He was a big man, rather stout, with a large handlebar moustache, the spitting image of the then popular comedian Jimmy Edwards. Mr. Flowers, for that was his name, wished me happy birthday. We crossed the road and he spotted the bow. He exchanged a look with Dolly and then said, "When you've taken that home, come and see me. I've something for you." My aunt laughed. "Give him 10 minutes. We returned home and Dolly said, "Oh, I could murder a cup of tea." Beatty offered to make it, but I was in the kitchen and filling the kettle before she had a chance to put the woman's own down, eager to please my lovely Auntie Dolly. "Malc, aren't you going to see Mr. Flowers?" "I need to try out my bow." "No, Malc, you need to see Mr. Flowers. Don't keep him waiting." I put down my cup. Dolly had a certain look in her eye that told me it wasn't worth arguing. Anyway, by that time, she could wrap me around her little finger. I knew it, and no doubt so did she. Mr. Flowers was still in his front garden, hoeing. He took me into his garage. A framework of red oxide-coated tubular metal was hung from the beams. I was later to learn it was a motorbike frame, and brazed by my clever neighbour. A workbench stood at the far end with a large engineer's vice bolted to the left-hand corner, and an impressive variety of tools mounted on a board behind. A motorbike leant against the bench. He pulled a tarpaulin sheet off what turned out to be a bicycle, leant against the right-hand wall. "Can you ride a bike, young Malcolm?" "No, I've never had a bike." "Right, it's about time you learned." Thus I became a staunch English bowman and a potential cyclist on the same glorious day. When I returned home proudly wheeling the newly black-painted loop-frame girl's bike, which was miles too big for me, Dolly had the target set up in the back garden on its tripod frame, and much to my chagrin, was not only firing arrows at it, but managed to hit the target every time. It took me 12 shots before I managed to hit the thing, and a lot longer before I could achieve the same feat 3 times on the run. Dolly did offer to teach me, but my male pride wouldn't let her. "I'm not having a girl showing me what to do." Dolly laughed. "It's a long time since I was a girl," she retorted. "But please yourself, I'm not known as Old Maid Marian for nothing."